Ryan says his family is extremely theist. His sister is having miscarriages. Life at conception, he's apparently being told. Family is blaming her. Sounds like a really difficult situation. Ryan, you are on Talk Heathen. How can we help you?
Hi, guys. So, yeah, basically I'm an atheist, and I have been for a number of years, as is my wife, and our entire family is extremely conservative Christian, and specifically so my sister and her husband. Basically she's been struggling with miscarriages and failed attempts at getting pregnant for about a year now. And due to her beliefs, life begins at conception, basically. They're treating every miscarriage as like a death in the family. And I know every miscarriage is definitely hard, regardless of belief, but my wife and I struggled with that. But they're taking it to such an extreme where they're like creating murals and other stuff like that. And in addition to that, my family is even more so indoctrinating her religious beliefs, like by blaming her or maybe in not so direct ways, but saying maybe she's gotten away from God or hasn't went to church enough or hasn't prayed about it enough, or maybe God just has a plan for her. And it's indoctrinating her even more. And so I've been noticing this over the year and even further back with other things. And she's become so indoctrinated that she's lost pretty much most of her skepticism, and she's getting into conspiracy theories and other conspiracies, and it's going down a rabbit hole. And I'm trying to help her and be there for her and be supportive the best way I can. But it's not really doing anything. I mean, she has her own life. She's an adult, but I don't want to see her suffer and be sad and upset and act as if someone's dying every time. And I'm not sure how I can reach her, I guess.
I think that having a miscarriage, even just one miscarriage, can be an incredibly emotional, distressing thing to deal with. And, especially if she's had more than one in a row. And that, having a really distressful, emotional time, people reach out, and look for something to make them feel better and to help them. And obviously she's leaning into religion, and it might be good to try and help her find another option. There's probably groups for women who have miscarried in the area. There might be online groups as well where they can talk, and maybe find one. Perhaps if they're very religious, they won't want one that's like explicitly atheist or explicitly secular, but there could be just one that's maybe a bit more milder on the religion front, but that uses, sort of evidence and has actual sort of sensible discussions about miscarrying. And they can say, well, miscarrying is actually just something that happens to some people and it doesn't mean anything in terms of God. And it might help her to hear that from, people with some kind of authority or people who have been through that, other women who have been through it. Because otherwise, she is going to turn to other things. And as things get more and more stressful, and especially if the people she's turning to are blaming it on her and her like failure to believe it hard enough or something, then she's going to be more desperate and reaching out for more and more like beliefs. And like you say, dropping any kind of critical thinking, which is kind of scary. And I think that, there's probably lots of factors going on here, and I wouldn't want to just say, oh, she's had a miscarriage and now she's into QAnon. But certainly it could be good to, if you can, try and help her find some kind of support group or people who've experienced it themselves.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, and I think the only issue I have is that she lives out of state, so I only see her once every couple months or so. And so I have limited access to talk to her directly and personally like that. And she, frankly, I don't think she's the type of person to go to a therapist for something. She's not that open like that, I guess. And she's very protective of her beliefs and of her miscarriaging and stuff like that. She really is not open about any of it. To discuss criticisms or constructive criticism or anything about it. And so that's why basically I'm trying to, in the moments I have, to be personable with her and, just be her brother. I'm looking to try to help. Like I said, I've tried. I've basically tried talking to her directly about how, it's not her fault. These things happen to good people for no apparent reason, and that's life, and it sucks, and it's unfortunate for everybody involved. But life goes on. We can try again, tomorrow, and that really hasn't helped because, like I said, my family is the ones who really surround her. Mostly. And so that's the constant input she's getting. So, I was also recommended the, Recovering from Religious, foundation or group. And, there's in no way would she ever do something like that. So that's why I'm trying to figure out tips, I guess, for me to try to do or say something, but I don't even know if it's possible.
I think
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that, from my perspective, and it's not probably the answer that you want to hear, but it sounds like you're sort of doing everything you can. The old adage, I think, applies. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Your first responsibility as her brother is to be there for her, to love her and be supportive, and to help her to the extent possible to understand that she isn't to blame for this, and that she might be susceptible at this vulnerable stage to being persuaded by people who have bad arguments. But the problem that you have when it comes to cognitive dissonance is, nobody reacts well to just having information thrust in front of them, especially if it's information that completely contradicts their preconceptions. And it seems that that's what you're running up against. And unfortunately, that's just basic psychology. There's some good, there are some good methods for having quote unquote impossible conversations. If you look into street epistemology, that might be one avenue to go down, so that next time you have a conversation with her, you might make a little bit more headway. But my first concern for your sister would be, is she getting professional mental health care? And unfortunately, as an adult, she's the one who has to ask for it. You can't just bundle her into a van and take her to a therapist and make sure she gets the mental health care. As an adult, she needs to pursue that herself. And if you advise it and she ignores your advice, and if she absolutely must be in this state of self-loathing and delusion that her family is putting her in, all you can do is your best. And I guess my main advice would be, apart from the street epistemology thing, don't hate yourself, because this isn't a situation that you have much control over. So, you can only do what you can, but ultimately your sister has personal agency, and you can't tell her what to do in this situation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's perfect. It's a perfect answer. And yeah, I definitely should and will bring up, trying to just get some help with it, dealing with it, to her. And I have some insight with street epistemology. I've done some sort of amateur light debates with like my family's pastor and other very highly religious, accoladed friend of the family and stuff like that. And they've went well. They've been good conversations. I've let them listen to them. I've recorded them, and they thought they were good and very constructive, but I didn't really make a ton of headway. But I think I'm maybe breaking a little bit of ice. But yeah, I'm 28, and so I've been an adult for a decade basically, but I'm kind of just coming to terms with how, like my parents as an example, I looked up to them for my whole life and even now, and I'm just struggling dealing with knowing that, the people I look up to, aren't able to like think critically on some of these really important issues, and they're not good skeptics, and they fall for scams and multi-level marketing schemes and just all these things. And it's just I'm sad, and I'm just kind of depressed over the fact that I want to help them, and I want to make them think more intellectually and have.
But you don't have any control over it. You do not have any control over it whatsoever, and it's as infuriating as hell. Because I'm in that situation. I left the Jehovah's Witness religion, and I live with Jehovah's Witnesses, my wife's parents.
Oh, yeah.
And I would give anything, my wife would give anything, for them to snap out of this delusion that's having an impact still on our lives, even though they should be shunning us, and they found reasons not to.
They're allowed to do that.
It's complicated, but essentially we're able to have some contact, but there's still an impact on our lives due to their delusion. And you just want more than anything to just grab them and say, you're being lied to. Let us explain why. But if they're not willing to have that conversation, you're out of the loop. And you shouldn't hate yourself for being powerless. You either have the power to do something or you don't. If you don't have the power and you're out of the loop, You've just got to let people get on with what they're doing. And sometimes, just sometimes, there might be just a little chink. The door might just open slightly, and they might want a little bit of two-way dialogue. And when those moments come, you can be ready to pounce on them with street epistemology or at least, meaningful discussion that's based on logic and that's kind and caring and understanding of the fact that this is a monumental challenge that's ahead of you to try and persuade them. But when the door is just firmly slammed shut, I guess it's a case of not hating yourself and just learning to live with the fact that you have no control over this situation.
I think there's when you're growing up, you have a very unique relationship with your parents, and they're kind of your superiors, and you trust them with everything, and you think they're great and stuff. And then growing up, you realize that you get to a stage in adulthood where you are just equals. They don't have that kind of parental, almost like godlike status over you, and it can be very easy to just kind of keep that there and keep seeing them the same way. And it is sad, but sometimes you do need to move them into a new place, a new stage in your relationship where they're like adults in your life who you love, they're your family and they are still your parents, but they don't have that kind of controlling angle on the kind of authority, and you respect them without question. When you said you're 28 and you're coming to terms with that, it just made me think I had a similar thing at a similar age, and I feel like I can empathize where you kind of the kind of the illusion of your parents is kind of smashed, and they're still great people, and they're still people that you love, but they're no longer this kind of perfect example, and you realize they're just flawed humans like everyone else, and it's just worth. That's okay. It's okay for them to be that, and you can still have a great relationship with them, and they might come around, like Lloyd said.
Just don't hate yourself. I appreciate all that. Yeah, and the one thing too that is extra weird is or not even weird. It's great. Is that we are really close still about everything. Like we just got back from a fishing trip with them, but it was great. Religion didn't really come up at all, and it was fantastic. But there's just this barrier, this wall that we cannot tread. And like when my sister's over, they will force everybody to pray, and my wife and I don't, but just stuff like that, where whenever they can insert religion, they do, and and then that's where things get serious, and they break down and refuse to talk about anything. But otherwise, we're super close, we're super happy with one another, just with the exception of this barrier. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm coming to terms with that. And I like you said, Lloyd, I want to reach out and just shake them awake, basically. But it's Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something I'm going to have to, like you said, when those moments come, reach out and try to pounce on them when I can, and do the best I can with that.
That's all you can do. You can only do your best. And there's no magic bullet. If there were a magic bullet for getting rid of bad ideas, we probably would not be doing this show.
Yeah.
But we do empathize with your situation, and we really appreciate you calling in. And hopefully what we've said is in some way helpful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess just on one final note, I am a big fan of Matt Dillahunty. He was one of the people that I watched when I was kind of coming out of religion, and he was outstanding in just his approach and his syllogisms, and every way he approaches it. That really clicked with me. It was logic and reasoning, and that's what got me out of it, because that's just how my mind works. But the problem with my family is that's not how they operate whatsoever. That stuff does not click with them. And so I'm trying to put forth an olive branch or something that will reach them or click with them. And I'm like I said, I'm probably going to keep digging for that thing. And I'm trying. So.
Okay. That's all you can do. And again, don't hate yourself. But again, thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks. And good luck.
Take care.